Howdy, partners. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Oral Reports. You know, during my junior high age, I read a book called Holes by Louis Sachar. It told the story of an unlucky teenage kid who was sent to Camp Green Lake, a juvenile corrections facility in a desert in Texas, after falsely being accused of a theft. The plot explores the history of the area and how the actions of several characters in the past have affected Stanley's life in the present. These interconnecting stories touch on themes such as racism, homelessness, and illiteracy, as well as arranged marriages. The book was both a critical and commercial success. Much of the praise for the book has centered around its complex plot, as well as its interesting characters and representation of colored folks and incarcerated youth. It won the 1998 U.S. National Book Award for Young People's Literature and the 1999 Newbery Medal for the year's most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. However, during the spring of 2003, before I graduated elementary school and moved on to junior high, and before I read the book, my mom took me to see a movie based on the book. So, let's get digging. Released on April 18th, 2003, the movie is Holes. Now, in the film, Elya Yelnats is dogged with bad luck due to an ancient family curse, courtesy of his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather, perpetually in the wrong place at the wrong time. Stanley is unfairly sentenced to 18 months at Camp Green Lake for a crime that he didn't commit. There, he is forced to dig holes in order to build character. Nobody knows the real reason why they're digging all these holes, but Stanley soon begins to question why the Warden is so interested in anything special or interesting about what the boys find while digging. Stanley and his campmates must stick together and keep one step ahead of the Warden and her henchmen as they plot a daring escape from the camp to solve the mystery and break the Yelnats family curse. So, what do I personally think of the movie? Well, I didn't really understand it too well after I saw it in theaters. I was 12 back then. But after reading the book at home and at school, I gotta admit, the movie is a lot better these days than it was back then. But let's move on to Mustang notes. The movie was directed by Andrew Davis, known for directing a number of successful action thrillers, including Code of Silence, Above the Law, Under Siege, and The Fugitive. The novelist, Louis Sachar, was in charge of writing the screenplay for the film. By the way, I heard that Sachar graduated from my mother's old high school, Tustin High School, back in 1972. Holes was filmed in California in the summer of 2002 and produced with a budget of $20 million. The film was shot in several locations, including Ridgecrest, California. Due to the heat inside of the holes reaching over 150 degrees and strong climate in Ridgecrest, the actors went through physical training with a stunt guide in order to keep in shape for long periods of filming. Also, filming was a new experience for many of the child actors who had never done filming in such an unpredictable climate before. To show the 7 kids' holes being dug gradually throughout the day, different phases were being used, for each of which the 7 holes were given different levels of deepness. For the yellow-spotted lizards, 14 bearded dragons were used, 4 of which were used for the main parts, and the rest of which were used as background atmosphere lizards. Now, as the book says, Camp Green Lake is a juvenile camp for bad boys, and there they are tasked to dig 1 hole each day, 5 foot deep, 5 foot wide during their sentence. Also, the camp has a mess hall, a rec room, and showers with only a cold temperature. Also, the campers need to wake up really early before sunrise during morning roll call. However, the camp doesn't really have any security like guard towers or electric fences around, since they're not needed there. Because if anyone ever attempts to run away, they'll become buzzard food. By the way, ever since the summer of 2003, Camp Green Lake's name made me think of a camp on Catalina Island that I spent an entire week at with my scout friends. Also, I like the 2 backstories that are featured in the movie. One focusing on Stanley's great-great-grandfather, Elya Yelnats, and the origin of the Yelnats family curse, and the second focusing on the history of Camp Green Lake before it became a dried-up wasteland. However, I don't think this movie is intended for younger kids, due to the story being pretty serious. I mean, there's adult language, gunplay, and there are certain things that can be pretty thought-provoking and mean-spirited. However, I like that there are several songs that play throughout the movie. My favorites being the main song, Dig It, sung by the D-Tent Boys, the romance song, Just Like You, sung by Keb Mo, and I Will Survive, sung by Stephanie Bentley during Kate Barlow's montage, which kind of gives me Lone Ranger and Zorro vibes. Also, I like the part when Stanley and Zero are on God's thumb, which is a huge mountain shaped like a thumb, which has water and an onion patch on it. And now, let's move on to the cast. Our main character, Stanley Yelnats IV, aka Caveman, is played by Shia LaBeouf, who got to be in Disney Channel's Even Stevens, along with Disturbia, Sony's Surf's Up, Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the 4th Indiana Jones movie, and 3 of the Bayformers movies. Fun fact, in the book, Stanley is overweight. However, for the movie, they decided to drop that. Anyway, to me, Stanley is a good-hearted teenager, despite the fact that his family has been cursed with no luck for about 150 years. Still, Stanley is a very responsible, nice, and caring kid. And I like that he's able to make friends with his tent mates while serving his sentence at Camp Green Lake. Stanley's best friend, Hector Zeroni, aka Zero, is played by Cleo Thomas. Zero is silent with most of the other boys, but it seems that Stanley is the only person that he talks to. Plus, Zero has got to be the fastest digger in the entire camp. To me, I think Zero is a very interesting character, and I think he and Stanley share a good friendship bond. Like when Stanley teaches Zero to read and spell. And I like the part when Stanley carries Zero up God's thumb, which miraculously lifts Stanley's family curse. Plus, before Zero was sent to Camp Green Lake, he and his mom got separated, and he's been living on the streets ever since. And it's also revealed that it was Zero's fault that Stanley was sent to camp due to him stealing Clyde Livingston's donated shoes from the homeless shelter and threw them at Stanley from a highway bridge. The rest of Stanley's tent mates are Rex Washburn, aka X-Ray, played by Brendan Jefferson, Alan, aka Squid, played by Jake M. Smith, Jose, aka Magnet, played by Miguel Castro, Theodore Johnson, aka Armpit, played by Brian Cotton, and Ricky, aka Zigzag, played by Max Cash. Now, I have mixed feelings for these guys. For one thing, they have been rude to Stanley sometimes, like when some of them were tossing dirt towards Stanley while they were digging. Squid makes fun of Stanley when he was writing a letter to his mom. Zigzag was beating Stanley up just because Zero was helping him dig his hole. And Magnet stole Mr. Sir's sunflower seeds, which Stanley took the blame for. But, on the other hand, these guys do their best to take Stanley under their wing. Plus, sometimes they say some of the funniest lines ever. We also have Brian, aka Twitch, played by Noah Politik. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, this kid was sent to Camp Green Lake for joyriding. In my eyes, I don't think Twitch gets as much development as the other D-Tent boys. But Twitch does give Stanley the idea to steal the water truck in order to find Zero. The warden of Camp Green Lake, Louise Walker, is played by Sigourney Weaver, best known from Alien, Ghostbusters, James Cameron's Avatar, Happily Never After, and The Tale of Deathbro. Now, despite the fact that we don't see her until after X-Ray finds a tube of lipstick, in my eyes, I think Walker is a woman who means strict business around her camp. Plus, I think she's kind of like Madame Medusa from The Rescuers, due to her using juvenile kids to find invaluable loot that have been buried in the desert. She also owns all the shade at the camp, and she's obsessed with the famous outlaw Kissin' Kate Barlow, since she has newspapers and posters all over her cabin. Also, I think her nastiest moment is when she slaps Mr. Sir after she polishes her fingernails with rattlesnake venom. No wonder her #1 rule at Camp Green Lake is not to upset her. Next is Mr. Sir, aka Marion Sevillo, played by Angelina Jolie's dad, John Voight, whom I remember from Jerry Bruckheimer's National Treasure movies and the first Fantastic Beasts movie. Mr. Sir is Warden Walker's second-in-command at Camp Green Lake. To me, he may seem kind of grumpy due to him retiring from smoking and switching to sunflower seeds, which is a pretty good idea. And he's also very sensitive and immature at times. But he takes his job very seriously. Plus, I like that he used his gun to exterminate yellow-spotted lizards. However, at the end of the movie, it is revealed that Mr. Sir is a paroled criminal who apparently committed a crime in El Paso. Next we have the D-Tent counselor, Dr. Pendanski, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who got to be in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed and The Incredible Hulk. To me, Pendanski seems pretty friendly most of the time, and I like that he prefers to call the boys by their birth names. Also, Pendanski can be a real quack, and he gives the campers rhetorical advice. However, I don't really like it when Pendanski abuses and berates Zero. Next up is Katherine Barlow, played by Patricia Arquette, who got to be in the third Nightmare on Elm Street movie. A long time ago, back when Camp Green Lake was a thriving lake town, Katherine was a school teacher who was famous for her beauty and spiced peaches. And she was in love with an onion man named Sam. But 3 days after her schoolhouse got burned and Sam got killed, Katherine became so heartbroken that she became a bandit outlaw who kisses the men she kills. In fact, one of the people who she robbed from was Stanley's great-grandfather, Elya Yelnats I. Also, I think it was very stupid that Katherine let a yellow-spotted lizard bite her. Our next character is Sam, an African-American merchant and onion man played by Dual Hill. Sam owns an onion farm across the lake. He has a donkey named Mary Lou, and he sells a wide variety of products and medicines made from his onions. To me, I think Sam is a kind and helpful character, like when he helps repair Katherine's schoolhouse in exchange for her renowned spiced peaches. Plus, every time Sam says that he can fix something, it kind of makes me think of Wesley from The Princess Bride. Also, I think Sam's relationship with Katherine is really sweet, especially during the scene where they kiss. Next we come to Louise's grandfather, Charles Trout Walker, played by Scott Plank, who sadly died in a car crash 6 months before the movie got released. While Trout did own the lake and half the town of Green Lake, I find him to be a real jerk with several racist tendencies. Plus, Trout doesn't seem to pay attention during class, and he seems more concerned about making jokes. Also, I just can't believe that he'd burn down Katherine's schoolhouse and murder Sam out of jealousy. Also, years later, Trout married Katherine's former student, Linda Miller, and after the lake dried up and Katherine died, Trout drove himself crazy digging holes to find her buried loot. And he even forced his own granddaughter to dig too. Next we come to Stanley's no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather, Elya Yelnats, played by Damian Luvara. Elya was a 15-year-old boy growing up in a small village in Latvia. One day, when he was shoveling, he fell in love with a farm girl named Myra Menke, the daughter of a wealthy landlord. However, Elya was unable to compete with a fellow suitor named Igor Barkov, who had offered his largest pig for her. So, after taking advice from Madame Zeroni by carrying a pig up a nearby mountain, Elya decided to let Myra get married to Igor, and he took a boat to America. But, in the process, he forgot to fulfill his promise to Madame Zeroni, and he let him and his descendants become cursed with bad luck. Finally, we come to Madame Zeroni, Hector's great-great-great-grandmother, played by the late Eartha Kitt, best known from The Emperor's New Groove and My Life as a Teenage Robot. Madame Zeroni was a wise old fortune-teller with one leg. She advised Elya that Myra Menke is not the best choice for him, due to Myra being empty-headed and her father being a schmuck. So, she suggests that Elya should go to America like her son did. So, Zeroni gives Elya one of her pigs and tasks him to carry it up a nearby mountain every day and sing a song as it drinks from a stream there. She also makes him promise to come back and carry her up the mountain so that she can drink from the spring. If he forgets, Elya and his family would be cursed for always and eternity. And now let's move on to my final words. Overall, Holes is a Disney movie that stays true to Louis Sachar's book, but with a few changes here and there. Elya Yelnats is a kind-hearted character, and Shia LaBeouf did a great job for his first theatrical film role. Zero was an interesting character too, and he and Stanley had a great friendship chemistry. The other D-Tent boys had some ups and downs, though they were still pretty cool. And Warden Louise Walker was a strict and an obsessive lady. Plus, I like the two backstories, which do very well connecting to the main plot. And I think that this movie has an underrated soundtrack. Though, as mentioned earlier, while it is PG, this is not a movie that younger kids should watch. There's some adult language, gunplay, and several intense scenes. Still, you folks should give this movie a watch, if you've already read the book, that is. Still, I give this movie a full 100%. Well, that's all for now, campers. Be sure to join me for my next blog, where we look into a racing movie starring a very famous living Volkswagen, Mustang Power.